at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that you can take from this, and let's transition into that, right? Like, what did this tournament do for you to, I'll say, calm your nerves? Like when you come into the tournament, you're like, oh, I don't know what's going on with X, Y, and Z. How did you feel about this show?
I mean, I think people may disagree with me on this one, but one of the things that really helped me calm some nerves about this, even though like you're gonna look back at the results and be like, okay, you played like teams you should be beating, and it wasn't exactly like you made it easy. Like there were a lot of close games in those matches, but I mean, one of the things that I really felt like I saw for the first time in a while was hunger from these guys again. Like it felt like, the guys that were on the field were out there playing for something, as opposed to like I know I'm going to be here, so I'm just going to show up and be here. But it felt like, like Tillman, it felt like he was playing for a spot in the starting 11 for the World Cup. Luna's playing for a spot in the World Cup roster. It felt like Berhalter, same thing. Pat Ajimong, maybe he's playing for that move that he just got over to Europe. Like, Freese, same thing. Freese is playing for a shot at the World Cup. Like, it felt like the guys out there, it felt like they were hungry. It felt like they wanted it just felt like they wanted it more than like we've seen from the team in, the recent friendlies and Copa America. Like it felt a lot more like 2014 USA again, and not exactly to that level. Like that's going to be very tough to match. Like those guys were just mentality monsters. Like they were just different beasts when it came to that stuff on the field. It felt a little bit more like that than it has in past games. So that made me like feel some hope again for the team. Maybe you bring in the right guys to inspire the rest of them to kind of get that mentality because imagine you have like the quality of players that our first team, our A team typically has, but then you give them this mentality of this hunger to like, want to be on top. Like it would be a great combination. That's like you can hit that level. That's the US team that I think could make a run at a World Cup.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well put. You definitely saw these guys who, and again, I'm using Sebastian Berhalter because we've just recently watched the game, but he showed up and was like, I'm going to play myself onto the World Cup roster. Diego Luna, I'm gonna play myself onto the World Cup roster, right? These guys showing up and saying, I am going to do this was really nice to see. Like you said, instead of having, oh, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I also enjoyed watching players like Malik Tillman step up and be more of a leader in the group, right? I feel like a lot of times when he's with the first team, he just is there, right? He's just another number. Where here it's okay. We got to see the best of him, and again, maybe not necessarily under the most strenuous circumstances, but we got to see the best of him. Got to see different players as well. Some players, and we've mentioned them already, have played themselves into consideration. I don't think anybody's a lock anymore, but I think they played themselves into consideration, and that was nice to see because for a while, I think a lot of us were just like, oh yeah, this is the team, right? And we talked about it last time we talked about the Gold Cup. If you don't have the pressure of the guys behind you and you just think you're always there, then your level drops, right? So I think it's another good thing to see. But I'll ask you, what do you think is the biggest worry that you still leave this tournament with?
I think the back line is still a little bit of a question mark for me. I think there's really good pieces in there. I think Anthony Robinson's obviously a lock in at left back. He's genuinely one of, I'd say he's probably a top maybe 10 left back in the world right now. Like he's doing phenomenally well. Chris Richards has really come into his own into the back line. But I worry about Tim Ream. I worry about him just continuously getting older. I know he brings good leadership and everything, but at some point we have to move on and bring in somebody else to be Richard's partner. The right back spot, I mean, I feel like Dest is constantly in and out of the USMNT team, whether with injuries or suspensions or whatnot. Obviously, he's very talented, but I really wonder what this back line is going to look like and what our best back line would be because there were moments tonight where I feel like they there were a lot of moments where I think they were good and they did a really good job in defensive shape, but then there were just a couple moments where they switched off and like we can't be doing that in World Cup games when you have so little opportunities. I mean, I take a lot of positives away from it. I don't really have too many negatives. I mean, I think the increased competition for spots in the World Cup roster is obviously going to be a good thing. It's going to push, like you said, it's going to push people to work harder, play harder, be hungrier. I don't even necessarily think like I don't think Poch had like a bad tournament. You could make the argument if you're saying that he didn't necessarily have a good one, but I mean he got us to the final where I think on paper we were definitely the team on the outside looking in for the shot at the title here. So I mean you could say he kind of did what he was supposed to do in this tournament. So I don't even necessarily like have negatives for him.
I disagree. I think that's my biggest thing is I don't think he knows this team yet. I watched this game. Malik Tillman took a knock 60 minutes into the game. I don't remember the exact time, but it was very clear he was nursing something, right? He wasn't moving at full pace. He wasn't he was still putting in relative effort, but you saw that as everybody else is working, he kind of was, it felt like he was taking plays off. Not all of them, but some of them because he had something going on. And I don't know if Poch knew who the next guy up was. I mean, I had Jack McGlynn sitting on the bench, I had Brendan Aronson sitting on the bench, and Quinn Sullivan sitting on the bench, and not a single one of them got called until the 86th minute. That's worrying to me, right? And now you're going to go into another tournament with guys that you've only seen 3 times outside of the club team, and now you got to figure out your sub pattern there. That's worrying to me, right? I'm not so sure that he's got a good understanding of what the team is yet, which I don't blame him for, right? Because he got hired in, halfway through a cycle and he doesn't get a lot of games because we're hosting the World Cup. It's a big challenge. I get it. But it worries me that we're going to get into a game where he's got to figure out, okay, what's next? And his rotation is going to be, well, I've seen this guy play 3 times, or I've seen that guy play 2 times. I guess we'll just toss him on and see what happens. Because even, I mean, you watched when he subbed those players in the 86th minute change after the goal. Or no, it was it the Downs change? It might have been the Downs change in the 70th minute. The players had no idea what was going on. Right? You had Tyler Adams calling over the bench like, "What are we doing? Like what's the shape? Where are we supposed to be playing?" He didn't verbalize that well, and that could be on Downs coming in too, not telling his teammates where to go, but they played the 2 minutes before the ball went out and they could, reshape completely out of whack. And just those little moments you get away with in things like the Gold Cup. Now, we didn't win the game, but in that moment, it didn't hurt us. But you get to the knockouts of a World Cup and you go up against a team like the Netherlands, like we did in 2022. I mean, you can't get away with that sort of stuff. So I'm just worried that he doesn't have enough time to understand fully what this group is going to be for him. That's a relative worry for me.
I definitely agree with you on the substitutions. I think across a few games he was definitely very slow to bring them on. But I think the thing that is a little bit promising is hopefully, he can take this as a lesson and, learn from it, kind of like, do better going forward. I think a criticism he got after the Costa Rica game was waiting too long to do the subs. And it kind of came again back again today in the Mexico game, but I believe in the next game he made subs much earlier on against Guatemala. So like hopefully he can like take, learn from things and take criticism instead of just being so headstrong to just like this is the way I'm going to do things. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. Hopefully he's a little bit more flexible. I think the promising thing for me is I feel like it felt like we figured things out a little bit more tactically than we had previously.
Or,
Like you said, I think going with a 4-4-2 shape was a good recognition that like Freeman and Arvston needed help defensively on the wings. They were just on both sides, they were getting overrun. And by going with the 4-4-2, you're giving them more help. Obviously, now that gives you some other issues like building out when you have like your two, it really just gives you two people up top to kind of like hold up or win a foul or kind of like maintain some possession for you as opposed to like maybe three or four. But it was necessary in my opinion. I think and maybe that comes down to him calling in the wrong players. Like maybe you're right in that he just doesn't have a good understanding of his player personnel. But hopefully we just use it as a learning opportunity. That's the biggest hope for me. And I guess it'll come down to like how we're looking in friendlies coming up for the next year.
yeah, yeah, and only time will tell, so we won't dive too much into that. But another one I've got, I'm worried that our personnel still isn't good enough. I'm not sold on the goalkeeper spot. Center back two is not nailed down, and a lot of the depth pieces are not there yet, right? Still don't know who the striker is going to be, right? I don't think Pat, Brian White, or Downs played themselves into consideration for the starting spot. Maybe Pat played himself into striker three. We've had that conversation already, and I don't think any of that's changed today. I think he got himself into a better spot today, truthfully. than he did before. I thought his hold-up play was great, regardless of what any of these annoying ass USMNT Twitter accounts say. They are I don't think they've ever played soccer in their life. They don't understand the game at all. I've seen people, and again, I'm not naming names because I'm not giving people free clout, but I've seen people after Pat Odgeman draws his fifth foul of the game complain that he's on the ground too much. He's on the ground because he's drawing fouls. You stupid people. But anyways, he's not a starter, right? So and this is the thing is like everybody thinks that the person who's there needs to be the starting guy, right? Pat is not a starting striker. He doesn't have the finished product yet. He's not scored like he had moments to score goals in big moments and he failed, right?
He had it today.
He had it today. It wasn't good enough. But to sit here and be like he is the worst person to put on a USMNT jersey ever because he's on the ground after playing hold up. First of all, anybody ever try to play hold up against a proper physical center back understands how tiring that stuff is. And that dude worked for 90 plus minutes to get in the box and get his stuff done. And you're upset because he's on the ground. Stupid. Just so like the level of who was it? Was it there was one Ellis maybe from the women's team who's like, yeah, most US fans don't actually know this game very well. Prime example right here, right? Call out the fans. They don't know nothing. Um, but the problem is we don't have that finished product yet. Pat might be in the conversation. Sure, Darby's going to be a big factor of that, right? But the big problem for me is the depth, right? I'm worried that when our players get tired, the next person up, we either have seen them play and they're not good enough, right? So I think about the left back spot. You got Anthony Robinson and who, right? Tolkien wasn't it. Arston's not it. Wiley didn't even get a look, which he hasn't played a lot, so I'm not upset with that. Um, right. And then you've got somebody like Joe Scally. Well, Joe Scally's played how many times at left back for the national team has been poor. So what's your next option? Tim Ream at 38 years old at left back? Yeah, no, thank you. Right. So I'm not sure what that answer is. Right. Let's talk about the right back side. Right. You've got Serginho Dest if he's healthy. Joe Scally, but again, we just talked about Joe Scally. Alex Freeman, I thought was good. Is he a starting, is he a guy who I would trust at the World Cup right now? I'm not sure, right? I haven't seen enough of him. I think he's great at the MLS level, right? I think he's done very, very well, but I see people online again calling for him never to come back again. I'm like, he was great this tournament. He had moments where he wasn't good. Dude's 20 years old. Of course he's having his moments. That's what happens. But I don't know. Like, I wouldn't mind him being a second right back on this team, but I don't know if we needed to call upon him if he could be up for the job. I'm not sure, right? Center mid wide open. I think Berhalter did well. Where does Luna fit in? Is Luna going to be one of those wide midfielders over a pool? What's it look like? Pulisic, Weah. You got all these options. If they're all healthy, does Luna get in? And if he does, is he at the level? I'm not sure, right? So that's my big worry is where is like did our depth show enough? I don't think they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's concerns in certain spots. Unfortunately, it's key spots too. Like you said, striker's kind of a little bit of a question mark. I mean, I think Balogun, assuming he's healthy, probably at least gets on the team. I mean, I
Yeah.
think he has the starting spot and it's his to lose. But I think striker two, there's a lot of guys in and around, and guys have been in and out of the USMNT, which makes me feel a little bit better because then you could just go with the hot hand going in. Who's been tearing it up this last year, who's like going to be a good option to bring in, who's been playing super well. And you've got guys who have been around, so they maybe are a bit more familiar. And then I do honestly like the option of bringing Pat as a third striker. Again, not as a striker, not as a starter, like you had said, but like name for me another guy who's going to be able to come into a game late if the US is winning and really be able to be a hold up guy for you to kind of help kill off these defensive like stints that the US is going to have to do. I don't think there's a striker that's going to do it quite like Pat could do it. You don't bring him on because you're like I mean, maybe you bring him on because you need a goal, but I don't think the goal is like you bring him on because you're down 2-1 and you're looking for a goal. I think that's when you go for striker two. But if you've got the lead, I think Pat is the best probably in the striker pool of like, I'm going to be physical, hold up the ball, help you win fouls, kind of kill off the tempo of the game if you're winning. I think that's absolutely an important person to bring on. I definitely agree with you. The fullback depth is looking pretty poor. I think the goalkeeper is the biggest worry for me.
Hmm.
It felt good for a period of time with Stefan and Turner, and I really feel like both of them have taken significant steps backwards. And I don't necessarily think people caught up to them. I almost feel like they fell down to that level. And I am very much concerned for what the goalkeeper spot is going to look like. And I mean, hopefully we can ride a hot hand and go into the World Cup with that. But that's the position I feel most worried for. I think we'll figure out center back too. And I trust with Richards and Anthony Robinson that whoever it is at center back too will end up being good enough that like if there are some mistakes, maybe those two can help cover. And if we have Tyler Adams too.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not so sure I can put my finger on anybody who I'd like to be the starting goalkeeper. I mean, really, I would love to see a healthy Zach Steffen, right? I mean, really playing well in league, and we saw the moments that he has at the national team, right? He when he gets called upon, he does play well because he's got a good consistent run of form. So I'd love to see him get shots in this friendly coming up because I don't think Matt Turner's it. I'm not sold on Freeze. I'm not, right? And I was along, last year when I'm like, I can't believe he's not getting looks, right? I think he is a raw talent, Matt Freeze, right? Comes through, great shot stopper, decent at controlling his area, but has those moments where he's just not there yet, right? And you can't do that at the national team level. You just can't.